This is it.
One of one.
It's a one-off.
All right, having a quorum present, we'll call to order the March 28th meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission. First item on the agenda is public comment. I have one member of the public, Mr. DeForest, who would wish to make comment.
Thank you. I wish to comment on a project that is going through the Architectural Board of Review at 901 Olive Street. At this address, the applicant, which is Design Arc, is proposing a 51-foot 61,801 square feet apartment complex that's going to be attached to the office building that's there now, the two-story office building there now. And the problem is the Design Arc, who seems to love modernism and the use of metal in its construction, is that this huge structure plunked down there on that block, as though it is not in the, sorry to say, in the EPV or any, and has any, although it's a block away from the Landmark High School, it's not that close, and the Board of Architectural Review seems fine. We can bring in this modern building, plunk it down with its metal siding, and with no attention to the surrounding area, the other structures surrounding it, and more important, that we are supposed to, both in the we were supposed to be considerate of the neighborhood and also considerate of the architecture style of Santa Barbara. This and the Design Arc people admit is completely different than anything in Santa Barbara. They have been very successful with this type of building. I guess it's cheap in places like Palm Springs and Orange County. Thank you. So I don't know if anything can be done about it, but I want to bring it to the public's attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeForest. Having no other public present, I will close public comment and go to approval of the minutes.
Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to make one comment that the general plan does say that buildings should have neighborhood compatibility.
Right.
And that is a point that should be probably raised with whoever commission or people are dealing with it. The general plan does state that that it should have compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. We generally don't discuss public comment, but I appreciate you chiming in on that. Moving to approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of March 14th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Lavoie, second by Boucher. Under discussion, any additions, corrections, or clarifications, please?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Drury. Commissioner Drury.
Under announcements in the minutes.
Page 2.
Item 2. That was meant to be a compliment, and I hope staff didn't research the cutting down of the trees because they were only trimmed properly. So the view was made better. It was so number 2, Commissioner Drury reported that the trees at 1707 Grand Avenue were cut down. They were only trimmed. And I would just strike staff as to research. It was just a compliment to the new owner.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I think what's missing is an indication as to why it's being raised. I would like to have that. That is a landmark or a landmark structure. The view of the landmark structure is now improved.
Actually, as I remember, Mr. Jory brought it up with the beginning with the question, are those trees landmarked?
Okay. Is that what we're supposed to research?
No.
No, don't you? I don't think you have to research it any longer. He just is making
Okay.
the comment.
But I would like to know the purpose of
The comment. I would say
help.
due to the significance of the historic resource, Mr. Drury commented that the trees at 1707 Grand Avenue were trimmed.
And allowed a better,
view of.
That's what I was
of-
gonna-
yes, that's
to improve the view of this resource.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, no one? Then I'll call the question. All in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. The consent calendar. Mr. Lamone.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Today's consent calendar, item A, 819 State Street, Suite E. Final approval is submitted with the condition that the front facade remain with no color change. Item B, 1224 State Street, was approved, final as submitted. Item C, 801 Paseo Nuevo, final approval as submitted. Item D, 1103 State Street, that was a proposal to allow an as-built tall, 6-foot-high tall chain link, and that was determined to be incompatible.
Incompatible?
Incompatible. It was continued 4 weeks with a request to resubmit with compatible material.
Okay.
And those items were reviewed by Mr. Schallenberger.
Motion to ratify the consent calendar?
Motion by Lavoie, second by Boucher. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. Mr. Lamone, do you want to go first?
Mr. Chair, yes, there are no changes to today's agenda. We do have Ms. Gantz missing. As you heard, her father died. She's away for a week. In her absence, myself and Mr. Berman will be staffing today's meeting.
Oh, boy.
Commissioners Sharp and Winnick will be absent, along with Mr. Schallenberger, who indicated he would be on call if we have a quorum issue.
Okay.
I did want to report back on an inquiry from last commission's meeting regarding the Italian stone pine tree. I had requested Mr. Downey to provide a memo explaining what had happened, and he followed up with an email saying he really was in and out of the office today, and I had forwarded that to the chair, and his response was that in order to protect the other Italian stone pines, there was a beetle insidious disease tree, and he didn't want it to spread to the other trees, so he ordered that it be immediately removed. Over the course of several years, there have been a couple more that have been suffering from this disease. So
It's actually an infestation.
infestation of it, and so I just requested in the future that he possibly, do this, quicker to notify us, so that we, as the commissioners and staff, would be aware of this in case there were inquiries.
Do you know when a replacement tree is going to be installed?
I believe shortly. If it hasn't, I know there are some that has not. Yeah, so I'll ask them to follow up on that.
Okay.
And
Mr.
then-
Chair, the stump,
Yes, Commissioner Arias.
the stump has been ground. And my question is, if this is beetle infestation, is there any need for spraying or anything protective measures to protect the rest of the trees?
Do not know. That's why I actually asked him to come and speak to you on the matter, because I knew there would probably be some other questions related to the
Perhaps
replacement.
You could relay that
I will
question
do-
to him.
I will do that.
Because that is very important to the street.
Okay, and if you can't attend, again, hopefully I'll get
You
a
could
reply in
attend,
writing,
sir.
so he'll be able to answer that.
Generally, there is no treatment for the beetle infestation.
That's what it's afraid of.
The last announcement is for all of you that are following what's going on at the airport terminal. The proposal to relocate the airport terminal, the old original airport terminal, is still underway, and we do have some restoration work that's still being proposed, and we will be seeing a proposal to replace the stucco on the historic terminal. They've determined they need to remove it as a part of the relocation. And I've asked Mr. Berman to research the exact restoration procedures and where the significance would end up once the relocated terminal is completed. And we'll be probably doing some environmental review as that project comes back to determine the correct type of designation if we want to, because it was eligible or is eligible for landmark designation. Don't know if this commission would make any different conclusion after it's been completed and renovated. And right now it's still currently on the potential list. So we would probably want to update that as part of that change. So I just wanted to FYI that will be coming to you.
And I'm assuming that they'll replace the stucco in kind, or like for like?
Mr. Berman and myself have requested they provide us a clear explanation on the restoration practice and what they intend to do. And my understanding is that part of your adoption of or acceptance of a report was very detailed as far as what features and elements would need to be restored and maintained. And we're just going to ensure that it comes forward with you with that in mind.
Obviously, the method of installation and code has changed since, that was originally stuccoed, and I would hate to see expansion screeds or even drip screeds at the base installed. Oftentimes that is required by code, and I don't know if we can get by that, but that does change the character of a building considerably when you see that exposed gap.
We'll make sure to ask them to propose those type of changes before they construct them.
Okay, very good.
That concludes my announcement.
Okay. Just one announcement. There is a subcommittee meeting for the HLC Designation Subcommittee at 11 o'clock on April 11th in the Housing and Redevelopment Conference Room on the second floor. Also wanted to pass on Ms. Gantz's appreciation for the plant or floral arrangement that was sent to her on behalf of the Historic Landmarks Commission. She was very appreciative of being remembered in that way, and she thanks all of you. She wanted me to announce that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
How much do we owe you?
We can take that up at another time, but...
Okay, but don't forget it.
Okay. Moving on then to subcommittee reports. Any commissioners have any reports on subcommittees that they've attended? No? Okay, then we will move on to the first item on the agenda, which is item number 1.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Drury?
Before we start the agenda, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
I received information recently that there's a project in the 900 block of Olive Street,
Uh-huh.
and I want to know why that's in the jurisdiction of the ABR and not coming before the Historic Landmarks Commission.
It is not in his El Pueblo Viejo district.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Yes, Commissioner Murray. Yes.
May 20th is the home tour sponsored by the Pearl Tree Society, and it will be at the Bungalow Haven area. The tickets are going fast. Already 600 people have signed up.
Oh.
So please be sure and get your tickets. It's just going to be a very wonderful tour.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Murray. So back to the regular agenda. First item on the agenda is item number 1. It's a historic structures report for 1709 Overlook Lane. This is a report that was prepared by Ronald Nye. What did I say? Oh, I'm sorry. Overlook Lane. The report determined that the property qualifies for city landmark status, inclusion on the California Register of Historical Resources and the National Register of Historical Resources.
Well, I think Mr. Becker was intending on being here.
Well, he is late.
You want to wait a minute? Or
No,
go
because we're
forward?
just doing the historic structures report, and then we have a miscellaneous action item, and then we have the project, which is scheduled for 1:30.
Chair Sitting, members of the Commission.
Yes.
Both Mr. Lamont and myself have reviewed the historic structures report and found it meets the requirements of the Master Environmental Assessment. and we're recommending acceptance of the report.
Okay. No, let's see if the applicant has anything to add.
I don't think so.
Introduce yourself. for the
I'm
record.
Ron Nye, historian.
Okay. Nothing to add? Okay. Then we have some questions from the commission, so sorry to put that off. Commissioner Murray had a question.
Yes, question report is wonderful. I just have a question about the garden.
Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, my question is, Ron, you said on page 16 that you thought the vision of the forest was not realized, and
Yes.
I had a hard time kind of understanding exactly what was not implemented or not implemented, and I was wondering if you could just in general tell us really what remains of the garden, because you conclude the garden is not significant, and I'm having a trouble with that, because even if there are no remaining major parts of the garden, the configuration of the garden, if it still exists, is to me is important part of the landmark. So to landmark the house and not include the grounds is hard for me to be convinced of that. So I was wondering if this plan and how much of it still remains, or in your study it was never built, or
Well,
if you had helped me.
In two or three places, I indicated what I thought were the original parts, and from the plan. And on the north side, the front of the house, there's a walkway that parallels the north, right up against the house, that parallels right in here. This appears on the original plan that I also included. Well, yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
And there's also a little retaining wall. So this part is original, and you'll also notice that this was an entry court that was paved, which now has a lawn over it. So I believe that actually was done. This wall continues on. That's there. These 4 trees are there. The current brick paving is fairly new, so that's not original. These steps are there, and there's some steps over at this end and right around here. And this main wall is there intact, except right below the terrace, where in the 1990s a addition was made, a belvedere, and they rebuilt the wall around that. And I have pictures of that. Unfortunately, all of these terraces.
Sorry, just to interrupt you. Could you move that microphone up to your mouth? There you go.
Maybe you can trade with
Mr. Becker, would you mind trading? Thank you. Might make it easier on
Yeah.
Ron.
Okay.
And then up at the
Yeah, there we go.
As it happens, I accidentally ran across an older picture of the rear of the property, which was probably taken in about 28 or 29. And it actually shows, I think, either 2 or 3 of these terraces with a few young trees. But that was after I'd already submitted the report. But none of this is there now. It's, you can see from my pictures.
Oh,
So whether it was originally put in and later removed, or I don't know. So they're just these little pieces that remain.
So you don't think that the remaining pieces are enough of a remnants to say that parts of the garden is significant? I guess what I was having trouble with was the conclusion that the garden is not significant, the landscape is not significant, and so that's why I was saying, in your opinion, despite all the additions in the 1990, would you say that even the changes and whatever was not implemented, would you say that they certainly destroy whatever important character-defining features of the garden?
Or destroy or deviate from the integrity of the design intent.
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky to have this plan. It's fairly clear what his intent was.
Yes.
Mr. DeForest, we need to leave this here, please. So I'm trying to, what Commissioner Murray is trying to say is that, yes, maybe these weren't installed and maybe this was changed here, but the design intent and integrity is
still there.
Is it there, or are you finding that it's not? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay. Does that help?
I would answer it as a politician would. It is not there on the whole, but that doesn't make the fragments less valuable. And my understanding of the proposed plan is, for the most part, they would leave the intact masonry pieces where they are, and those wonderful 4 olive trees would remain and so forth. The one thing that is proposed to be removed is and reused is the little retaining wall and the pathway in front. And I believe Mr. Becker could explain the reasons for that, but we have seen on one of the older drawings by Mr. Smith that his preferences was for a circular drive, and there's also kind of drainage problems with that along the way it is. But all that being said, those do appear to be original.
So the question is are they significant enough to, in your opinion, include designation of the site of the landscape?
No.
Pardon?
No.
No. Okay. Does that answer your question,
Yes.
Commissioner Murray? Okay. Commissioner Drury?
May I ask Mr. Nye a question?
Yes.
So that photograph on page 11, the top photograph showing looking up at the Belvedere and then the house, basically that's where that missing landscape would be. Is that correct? I mean, the top.
Yes, it would be below that
Belvedere, right. So basically it's sort of a fresh canvas, so
Right.
to speak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Commissioner Arias?
On page 5, you speak about a swimming pool being installed, and on page 3, you talk about a swimming pool being installed, and on page 5, you talk about a new swimming pool. Are there 2 swimming pools, or is it a reconstructed swimming pool, or is it the same swimming pool?
It's the same swimming pool installed in the 90s.
So it isn't a new pool, as you designated it on page 5?
Well, it's relatively new, historically speaking.
Maybe if you change
What would
that
you like to hear me say?
the
Well,
90s.
it implies that there are 2 pools, an original one and now a new one. And
It's just one pool.
yeah, just one pool, okay. I have comments, but you have not opened public hearing yet.
Yeah. We kind of got sidetracked there. Okay.
Would it be all right for me to make a comment about the front?
In relation to the report.
Yes.
Yes.
It was just discussed, and he mentioned that. I went to the archives, and we're looking at the original drawings where we saw the circular driveway that George Washington Smith drew, and also we looked through all the letters, and his intent, we believe, was to do what we are doing and not have that little retaining wall going around there. And one of the letters to the owner is saying, here's how we can save some money. We don't have to grade the front down. And I'm sure what his response was to make these little retaining walls, which caused there to be water infiltration and all this other thing. But it was purely a thing for the owner to save money. His design intent, from all we can gather, was to do what we are proposing to do.
And this is that original drawing that you're referring to, Mr. Becker, and this is the circular
Yes.
portion. Okay, thank you. Okay. Any other questions from the commission? Then I'll open public comment. And we have one speaker, Mr. DeForest.
Yes, good afternoon. As I haven't had the opportunity to see the historic structure report, but my father, Lockwood DeForest, was the designer of...
Judy, would you press the button? Or thank you.
I had. No, I thought it. I saw it on. My father, Lockwood DeForest, was the landscape architect for this project, and was very proud of the terraces because it previously the property just fell off from Overlook Lane down to the canyon below, and so these terraces were very important. And Dr. David Stretfield, the author of the landscape historian from the University of Washington, and the author of Creating a New Eden, book on the history of landscape architecture in California, visited this property in the 70s when the terraces were still extant and praised them. And then, I guess it's the 90s when these people came in, they wanted to put in a swimming pool, and they sort of pushed the bank down, destroying the terraces, and or destroying much of the terraces. But I just want to point out that these terraces were a major landscape feature of the of this property, and also I could recall my father being rather proud of this solution to of putting terraces to make the bank, the slope, usable and aesthetically pleasing. So if I would opt, and I don't know whether Mr. Becker got as far as, I think he did, Berkeley, to see my father's plans, that if the whole property could be included as part of the landmark, maybe some of these historic or portions of the historic terraces could be recreated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. See no other public, I will close public comment and move on to comments from the Commission. Commissioner Rios, any comments at this time?
Yes. Very good report, and I learned a lot reading from it, but I would like to make a suggestion to the report maker. When you look at the photographs of where the new location of the windows and the doors and the things that are going to be changed on these maps, and you try and impose them on the photographs, it's very hard to figure out some of them because some of your descriptions, your elevations don't exactly mesh with the elevations in the descriptions here. So I would suggest that in future reports, that you consider putting a clear sheet in with the photographs, and then so that you can put the clear sheet right over the photograph and see where the window is and where the door is. Makes it a lot easier, because it was hard to tell. And there's one place I still haven't figured out where the windows are going to go. So I would think that would make reading your reports much, much easier. But it's a very good report, and I learned a lot from it.
Commissioner Murray?
Yes, likewise. I really enjoyed reading the report, and it was really good. I do have the same concerns. My questions were really leading to the concerns that Callum mentioned, that if this house is so important, and as this report has found out, it's not only a city landmark worthy, but a national register worthy and California register worthy. And I just think that the garden, the remembrance of it, if they become part of the designation, which we hope we can achieve, is going to just do what Callum is saying, that whatever future work with the garden could restore some of those elements and make it even better. But to say that the garden is not part of the landmark is I think will really deter from the importance of the property.
Okay, so you're saying that the garden shall be included in the designation?
I think so.
Okay.
And I'm
Well, you're our expert, so.
And I'm also, agreeing that the intent of the architect is to, restoring the original intent of G.W. Smith, and be nice also to include all those records, letters, whatever supporting details, if the historian could add to the report, just so it's a full documentation of the property, would be so appreciated.
Chair Sitting, members of the Commission, I just want to make it very clear that this item is on the agenda for approval of the report. If what the intent of the Commission is to have the report revised, we're not addressing in this item the designation of it. We are addressing whether the significance of the historic resource. If you want to include the garden as a historic
That should be in the
resource.
next item. Okay.
Yeah, well, no, if you want to designate it, that's the next item.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Lavoie, any comments?
No comment.
Commissioner Boucher? Drury? No. Okay. Anyone else have any other comments? I'm going to add one comment to the realm. I think you should include the recently discovered photograph, 1920s photograph showing the terrace scene, and other supporting documentation and letters within this report. So it looks like you're going to be back before us, or back before Mr. Berman to look at all of those things. So
I haven't seen those letters, that's why I didn't.
Okay, I think Mr. Becker might have referred to those. So the comments are include the recently discovered 1920s photo showing the terrace scene and other supporting documents and letters. Also consider adding an overlay showing proposed elements over the existing elevations. All in favor of the motion, which is to revise the report based on those comments? Okay.
No, I
What did I do?
Don't we want to accept the report with those recommendations to be done?
You don't have a motion on this one, Mr. Chair.
That's the problem. Boucher made a motion. Do you have a second?
You made a motion?
To accept the report with the changes that we had mentioned.
Come back to staff.
How does the commission feel about it?
I think it could go to staff.
Yeah.
Although I would love to see the letters and the photo, but
Yeah, which we can.
Chair Sitting, could you
Yes.
clarify the motion? Are you saying that you want the significance of the historical significance of the garden added?
no, I didn't say
Revi-
anything about that. Okay. That's coming next. Okay.
That is to accept the report.
Accept the report with the...
Okay.
Chair Sitting, I still think that if you wanted to say that the report should, I don't know if you can get Mr. Nye to revise the report, but if you feel strongly that the report should say that the garden elements are a significant historic resource, then you could recommend that. But what I'm saying is the next item on the agenda
Yeah.
is the designation.
Okay.
At this time, you're considering whether the report is adequate, that it covers and accurately describes the historic resource.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Lavoie.
about the garden, I think the report adequately describes what survives of the garden elements, and I don't agree that there's sufficient remnants of the garden to convey what it originally looked like. I think the report is adequate in its description, and if we wish to include the surviving landscape elements, we can. There is sufficient evidence in this report to do that.
Okay. So then let's get a consensus or a sense from the rest of the commissioners. Commissioner Drury, do you feel that the remaining landscape remnants from the original Lockwood DeForest Jr. plans are significant enough to designate?
I would agree with Commissioner Lavoie.
Okay. Commissioner Boucher, same question. You agree? Commissioner Murray, I know, agrees. Do you agree, Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, I agree that they should be.
Included. Okay. And,
Yes.
And Commissioner Rios. Okay. So then, if the maker of the motion is okay, I'd like to revise the motion to say that. No, it's already. You're right. It's already in the report. Okay. Very good. Leave it at that. So we have a motion and a second. Motion was by Boucher. Second was by Lavoie. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is 1709 Overlook Lane, and this is a request by staff to add this property to the City of Santa Barbara list of potential historic structures and site. Mr. Berman.
Chair Sitting, at this time, staff is recommending that the Historic Landmark Commission consider adding this property to the list of potential historic resources.
Okay. Any questions, or Commissioner Boucher?
Well, I was going to make a motion to that this be added to our list of
Okay.
potential resources, because to me, it's very exceedingly important.
And are you including the remaining landscape?
Well, I'm not sure that there's enough.
Well, I thought you indicated in the last that you felt that it would be important.
No, we did. That the surviving landscape elements, as identified in the report.
Yeah, on page 12 and
are
13.
defining features of the resource.
Yeah, they're mentioned on page 12 and 13 that of the report, what remains of that original garden.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner
Point of
Rios.
order, this is a new item on the agenda. You should have public input if there is any.
Okay, I will open public comment. We have Mr. DeForest. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to make sure that the entire property be included as part of the historic site, despite the the late 20th century ruining of my father's concept. It's the whole property should be a potential historic landmark, and with people like Mr. Becker, architects like Mr. Becker, maybe the new owners can. I know they need their swimming pool, but couldn't be persuaded to use, and my father's plans are available, and I think Mr. Becker found them to restore as much as possible the hillside designed by my father, Lockwood DeForest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Okay, having no other public, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the commission. Any questions? Commissioner Murray?
I wanted to ask if the owners agree with the designate the proposed in the report that it is worthy of a landmark, and I guess wanting them to say.
Yeah, I believe. Okay, I believe we have the owners here. If you could please come up to the microphone.
I guess it's just nice to have the consent of the owners to say that they too want to designate.
If you could state your names and then just say that you agree or disagree.
We are Courtney and Tanny Jones.
Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for asking us to comment. We enthusiastically agree with the designation, and if it's appropriate when we get into the landscape planning, we might want to make a comment about that and our initial impetus to do what we can to recapture certainly the spirit of the Lockwood DeForest Gardens, if it's not practicable to do it in all of its physical complexity. But
Right. That's all.
Okay.
That's
our
intention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We
Really
appreciate you coming.
Really appreciate it.
Okay, so any other questions, comments?
Where are we on the agenda? Have we accepted the historic structure?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Okay, we are now on the miscellaneous action item, and this is a request and pardon? So, this is an action item, so we need a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Commissioner Lavoie.
I make a motion to request staff to add this property to the City of Santa Barbara list of potential historic structures and sites, and that the current property boundary be the boundary of the designation.
Second.
Okay, we
change-
have a motion and a second. Motion by Lavoie, second by Boucher. Under discussion,
I would like to
Commissioner
have,
Rios.
consider an addition to the motion stating that with appreciation that the owners have indicated their support.
Okay.
Thank
Is
you.
the maker of the motion okay with that?
Yes.
And the seconder? Okay. All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chair?
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, second motion to request of staff to initiate the process for designation.
Second.
I don't know that we can do that, can we?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
That's how we do
It
it.
is under this item. Okay. We had a motion by Lavoie and a second by Arias. All in favor?
Aye. And again, if you would add the comment about we have the owner's support in this pursuit.
That is important. Okay. Why were these two items so difficult? It was difficult for me to usher it. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Yes. Okay. We're done with no. We're done with that. But now it's Mr. Becker's turn, and Mr. Nye, you may have that copy. And if somebody would pass
Mr.
it to
Chair,
staff, please.
are you on the next item on the
We
agenda?
are getting there. Item number 3 is G, 1709 Overlook Lane. This is a proposal for a 20-foot square foot first floor addition on the west elevation and exterior alterations to an existing a two-story single-family residence. Mr. Becker, if you would introduce you and your team and give us a brief presentation, please.
I'm Peter Becker, I'm the architect, and this is Tom Henson, who works in my office, working on the project. And I haven't met you yet, representing the landscape.
I'm
firm.
standing in for Derek Eichelberger, my partner at our Kitty Studio. My name is Puck Erickson.
Welcome all. If you would just bear with us while staff gets a copy of the plans that were submitted. I can read more to you. New doors, windows, and attic dormers are included in the project, as well as a 1,400 square feet of new permeable paving, new entry gates, and landscape plan. There will be 111 cubic yards of grading excavation and 113 cubic yards of fill. The single-story, 3-bay detached garage will remain unchanged. I can only read so slow, Mr. Berman. Okay. The guideline floor-to-lot area ratio is 1.39 or 117 of the maximum FAR. This project requires environmental assessment and a public works encroachment permit. Whew, I timed that right. Okay, Mr. Becker, if you would like to give
Okay.
your presentation, and you may use the pointer if you desire.
Okay.
That's a very important.
Okay. Yeah. 1 second. Actually, let's everybody get their plans in front of them. I'm sorry.
I've got my small drawings here. I can't handle it with my back. Thanks.
Okay, we ready? All right. Okay. Lovely. Go ahead.
So we are addressing some of the real problems of getting into the site first. That right now, there is no way to come into the site without having to back up as a guest, so that we want to go and do a version of George Washington Smith's original thought of having a circular driveway, which will allow guests to come in and then and go out head first, and then also with vegetation to kind of disguise the new garage that was built in the 90s, although it's not too bad, but we just want to make people not be looking in that direction quite so much as they are right now. The previous owners built this garage, and they did a fairly nice job of blending in with the original house. They left the original garage doorways along here, and we need to reconfigure this garage. It never really has been reconfigured into more usable space, and we would like to remove the vestiges of what they left of those garage doors in order to make a building that I think George Washington Smith would say if he came back today, if I've got a garage here, I don't need that here. I want it to look more like what's going on here. We are leaving the front pretty much the same. We have a few intrusions that we want to make here, mainly because of the garage, a few little windows here. This dormer, we also have a supporting letter on this that George Washington Smith wanted to have this dormer, evidently, and the owner wrote a letter back saying, I don't want to have a dormer that's right next to a servant. So they took the servant's dormer away. And so, yeah, so here's an earlier drawing that shows the dormer that we...
This was the servant that didn't get the...
Yeah.
Well, times have changed.
Right. So we figured the sociology is such that we could afford to mix the use, and then...
Call it the help.
And then here on the opposite side, we have we would like to put a little tiny flat dormer that will bring in some light into a master closet area, and a couple windows that go into the master bathroom. And then here we'd like to turn a casement window into a French door so that this potentially wonderful garden on the side could be useful to go directly out to that.
Do you want to show us some elevations
Yes.
of those changes?
Yes.
I don't think we are interested in the floor plan too much unless there's something with that garage that you need to explain.
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
Elevations are A30. So these are existing elevations, and proposed elevation.
Okay. So here we're proposing a window that matches, or we're taking these windows here and wanting to add one right here to bring light into this place here. And then here, this was a garage before, and so now it has a different use, and so we would like to use windows that are, again, matching existing windows here and here. And then on the side, there are existing windows that are longer, and I think these people in the 90s put them in, and they're just the wrong proportion. So we would like to, again, use a version of this existing setup here and put it right there. Okay. So that's the front. That's on the east side, so there's just a regular 3-foot by 4-foot casement window that we would like to replace with French doors that match the original French doors.
And that's the
And that's
Helps dormer.
The helps dormer. And we would like to add a window here and a window here to bring more light into the master bathroom, and then this little dormer up there to bring light as well into there. Everything else in that elevation would remain. And then over here is where the garage, there used to be 2 doors of a garage here, and so we'd like to just add these in here without having the wood timber of the garage headers. And we've modified this door, but these were added by, we're almost positive, the people in the 90s. So this is not George Washington Smith's work along here anyway.
Okay. That pretty much wraps it up, I think.
I think
doesn't
that's it, yeah.
Okay. Ms. Erickson, would you like to present your landscape plan, please? If you want to trade places with Mr. Becker, I think that would be a good idea. Pardon? That was Ms. Erickson.
We'll start with that.
Okay, then I will put it up on the screen.
Flip over here. First of all, I just want to say we're thrilled to be able to work on this project. It's really fun. And Derek, sorry he couldn't be here today, but he's with his kids on spring vacation, so I'll do the best I can. We started with the entry situation. You can see on the site plan there's a little, it doesn't show up very well here, but there's a notch out which represents the city property. And so this gate plan and the plan view has been submitted for an encroachment permit into the city. Because obviously coming this far into the property really isn't workable, and we need to get from point A to point B. And then, as Mr. Becker alluded to, going back to the original intent, thought of having a circular drive space rather than this asphalt area over here, and narrowing down the throat between the entry circular motor court and the garage space, so that you really are staying in this space rather than right now you sort of feel like you're just drawn down the hill immediately to the garage. And because of the location of the front door, you could almost miss it with this kind of spatial kind of tunnel pulling you in. So we're trying to close that off a bit. Getting back to the original plan, also there's an existing stone retaining wall that runs along here that we want to change slightly and push it farther out into the garden. So rather than this hedge, elevated hedge that just drops down to the lawn, we can have better layering of plant material in this part of the garden that you see from the house. And then we come around the corner and clip the wall at the same angle as our little entry court experience by this major olive. The grade change is already there, so it should not be an issue in terms of the health of the olive. But that allows us, rather than the walk, to be right along the side of the house. And I think if you have any questions about the drainage issues, I think the architects could probably best explain that. But the idea is to get the grade away from the house and still have the intent, though, of the original design of stepping into this small entry court, but we've expanded it slightly to do a very small fountain at that point. And all of the stone in the existing little entry court is Arizona flagstone, and so we're suggesting to remove that and go back to Santa Barbara sandstone and all of the, Santa Maria stone.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course we'd be salvaging the Santa Maria stone that's on site.
Which you can't get anywhere, really.
Well, we can
difficult?
get really close with some of the stone coming out of the Lompoc area, which I think is pretty similar.
I'm going to stop you right there for a minute,
Certainly.
Ms. Erickson, and have you go back to the gate and just describe that real briefly, what the materials are and the heights and such. I know it's all here, but it helps.
Chair
Well-
Sutting, members of the Commission, can I just interject briefly about this gate issue? I was asked to communicate that we would like to get HLC comments on the appropriateness of the location of the gate,
Okay.
and to point out that some photographs were obtained of the location to better illustrate the area.
Just briefly describe what the gate material is and such.
At this point, we're really looking at a variety of materials, but it could be all steel. It could be perhaps wood and steel. It's not.
Decided.
Yeah.
Okay.
But and in terms of the design direction, that's
Okay.
the direction. we want.
All right. And then if you want to just wrap up with the rear yard, that would help.
So we're maintaining the existing olive trees in the back terrace, which are really lovely. This is the area, have you seen the photographs
Yes,
of these
of the dome,
steps?
uh-huh.
And so we're proposing that we would eliminate the contemporary brick and go back to a more traditional brick that's used elsewhere on the property. This is that Belvedere feature with a sort of bulbous rock sticking out, and this would become a small pond spilling into a pond below. And that gets to the basic intent of the rear garden, which, because when they did the pool, the grades perhaps that Lockwood DeForest was dealing with when the site was, when he first saw the site, it's quite disturbed at this point in time. So we're going back to two simple terraces with fruit trees, and these olives down at this level are beautiful olives now. So we're keeping this view open to the sort of existing original olives down below rather than blocking them. And then here is the original little belvedere and arbor that exists, and that's a really important piece to keep. And there will be some repair needed to that area. And then again with the pool, right now it has sort of what do you call it, stamped concrete.
Lovely.
Yeah, it's not so great around the whole thing. And we really love the idea that Mr. DeForest had of a circular lawn area, or it was implied at least in the original plan, down in this area. And so we wanted to remove some of that paving, go back to true stone terrace, new coping, and do a circular lawn off the pool. And then this is the only place in terms of the original retaining wall that is still remaining. It sort of wanders along, that we break through this area to, in the style of the small belvedere that's here, do some steps through to a lower meadow area that then engages you in these lower terraces that we're proposing. And on the northeast corner, going back in his plan, you can see there was almost like a little knot garden or something up there. Yeah. And going back to a garden that has sort of a strong geometric form. However, again, that little retaining wall is very close to the house, and if we're adding doors, we would like to remove that wall and be able to walk directly into the garden space itself.
Okay.
I think that sums up our
Thank
changes.
you. I will open, I'm assuming the applicant is finished, I'll open up public comment. Seeing none, I will close public comment and move on to questions from the Commission. Commissioner Drury, do you have any questions at this time?
On page A3.1, the proposed south elevation, I'm looking at that new dormer, and I'm hoping that I can read plans properly. So on page A2.2, that dormer windows above on the proposed second floor plan. Is that the same dormer?
Which dormer?
There's the new dormer proposed on the south elevation, and the floor plan, second floor plan on page A2.2, I'm looking at dormer windows above, and I'm assuming that's the proposed new dormer. That's right? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And the only other question is, will there be any removal of the original sandstone retaining walls or
Yes, in
anything?
the front. We're proposing to remove those walls. Let
me just clarify for you, Commissioner Drury, they would be proposing to remove these walls here.
Yes. And would you be retaining the stone for further use on the
Oh,
property?
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boucher, any questions? Commissioner Lavoie, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Murray?
Are there any trees being removed?
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
Commissioner Arias, questions?
Yes, one question. Since this is a structure of such importance, and you are in a high fire hazard zone, does your landscaping plan reflect a defense pattern or an ability to defend this structure if there is a fire?
Well, actually, that is, I'm not speaking for the architect, but
I
as
understand.
landscape architects, we had a project up on Las Canoas that we put in a very similar motor court, and it was actually used by the fire department to defend that area because they felt it was a place that was safe for them. So I think
They will have turnaround
creating
ability, yeah.
an area that is much more accessible than it is now is important. And then we do have noted on here our fire zones, and that will be incorporated into our final landscape plan.
Is there any possible intention to be able to pump from either the pool or the pond onto the roof area or in the area in case of fire?
I think as the project develops, that would certainly be a point of discussion.
Because this house is special and we
Yeah.
would like to save it.
I think a fire protection plan for the structure,
I think it would be,
but I'm not
Yeah,
the architect.
I appreciate your comments.
Defer to
Thank you.
Mr. Becker.
One thing about the roof is it looks like it's
Shake.
old shingles, but it's not. It's terracotta shingles.
Nice.
And the owners have found a source where they can repair that, and so there's definitely not going to be taking it off. But anyway, so it is a terracotta roof on there.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
What is your intent or reason behind having the gate? And the reason I'm asking that is because we have to sort of respond to Public Works questions and concerns about the location of the gate. So I just wanted to hear a little bit about the intent of or the reason why you want the gate there.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to
Fine.
defer to the Joneses.
That's fine. Yeah, if you could please change chairs with Ms. Erickson.
Sure.
Other one
It's green.
There you go.
Is this all right?
Yes.
Okay. If I can just go back for 1 second to the question of fire protection, what might not have been known at the time the plans were drawn is that we have through Chubb Insurers coverage for a special fire protection service, which I think many people in high fire areas have. So that would be certainly part of the response to our property in the event of a fire. So that's That's true. The gate, is that the question that we're talking about now? It's for two reasons. One of them is that it's not inconsistent, we think, with other George Washington Smith houses of a similar size and importance. And two, it's also not totally inconsistent, although the neighborhood is somewhat mixed. There are several other properties, including another George Washington Smith property, which are gated. And it's a question in part also of security for us, because we do travel, and we're not...
Don't tell everybody. We're on camera.
This is televised. Because we do take long walks.
Long walks.
No, it's because you have a dog, right?
And we have a dog, yes, a large dog.
Yes.
Right.
Mean, large watchdog.
The previous owners had a very small dog, and so the gate was only about 2 feet high. Yes.
Okay, I think that answers the question. So, Ms. Erickson, if you could come back up, please.
Could I ask one more question
Yes,
of Ms. Erickson, please?
Ms. Erickson.
Yeah.
Are you working to also retain water on the site and eliminate as much runoff as possible?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, I'd like to see that in your plans, because we never know what our water supply is going to be at times. And if you go to an expense to create a landscape garden, you'd like to be able to make it work.
I clearly remember the desal plant.
Yes, we all do.
A couple other questions I had.
Sure.
What is the diameter of your circular driveway?
50 feet.
50. Okay. And then this last question, I think, is for the architect. Mr. Becker, did you study or perhaps consider using different size windows for these new windows, not necessarily to match these, but maybe have more of a composition like on the other wing, so that we have a variation in sizes? Is that something you considered, or how did you come about with that?
Well, this is the end result of a lot of consideration.
I'm not saying you didn't make considerations.
Over and over
but
and over.
yeah, really. No, okay.
I've been familiar enough with George Washington Smith to know the magic of how he creates illustration on these.
Okay. I'm not questioning your abilities.
But it's just he has this ability to mix the same number of windows in a way that don't look like they're the same windows, and he has a way of making things seem like they're all lining up, but they don't quite. And there's always some life mixed in with the organization it's overpowering, especially on the front. So this is the result of giving all that a lot of thought, and also wanting it to look like he would have done it.
See, that's the right answer. That's all I needed to hear.
All right.
Very easy. Okay, we'll go to comments then from the commission. Starting with Commissioner Rios.
I have no comments. I've asked them in the form of questions.
Okay. Commissioner Murray, questions or comments? Commissioner Lavoie, comments?
Yes. I'd like to commend you for a very deft and very adequate handling of and commendable handling of this project. The changes look like Smith would have done them himself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boucher, Commissioner Drury.
I would agree, and I would also like to thank the owners for taking the time and trouble to make this property the showcase that it is. And also, I had questions about that lone dormer on the south elevation, but I think that the question that you asked, Commissioner, and Mr. Becker's answer, that kind of offset dormer all by itself on that big expanse, sounds really good to me now. It didn't a minute ago.
See, it's a good thing I asked the question, right? I just have a couple of comments, or really one comment. Well, I better make two comments on the landscape plan.
I'll make 3.
Okay. I'm going to make as many as I want. No, the one comment that I have to do is with this circular driveway and how pinched and how close we are to the house with that edge. I mean, that looks like it's probably about 1 foot, and that's being generous. And 50 feet is probably a minimum, but I think you may even be able to go down to 48. And just buy as much space and buffer between the proposed circular drive. I mean, because that's an important elevation
Yeah, I think
there.
that's a really important
point.
Yeah, and then with respect to the gate, I particularly don't have a problem with it in its proposed location. It may be difficult to get your encroachment permit. I don't know where you are in that process, but all the best to you, best wishes on that. And I guess I would look to more of a wooden look on the gate as opposed to a metal look. I think that's just a little bit more appropriate for this style house. I don't know if my two architectural experts and my historian really feel that way, but I feel pretty strongly that it should be wood. I think that would be more in character. So this has to have environmental assessment, so we cannot yes, we cannot take an action on it, and it has to have the Public Works encroachment permit. So, yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Mr. Bergman?
Isn't the environmental assessment, the historic structures report we just approved?
It's not complete, we just...
It's not complete.
No.
Okay.
So the comments are, restudy the diameter of the circular driveway to allow more landscape space between the edge of the driveway and the structure. Use wood material for Commissioner LaVoy?
I would disagree. I think if you built this out of wood, it wouldn't last a month.
Well, it has a steel superstructure.
Yeah, but I think this gate in iron and painted gray would be absolutely elegant.
Okay. Well, then you should have chimed in when I made the comment. So,
No.
all right. So you're not you're striking that comment about the gate being in wood.
Mr. Chair, may I make a motion?
I'm making comments.
Summarize the comments in the motion.
Go for it. Jeez.
Make a motion for continuance with a commendation for the design and requiring no further study or changes, with the exception of the location of the circular driveway, that its geometry allow at least 3-foot clearance from the building corner, whether it becomes an oval or a circle pushed, and acceptance of the gate design and location as a reasonable location for the property, and a design appropriate for the building in iron or steel.
God bless you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion by LaVoy, second by Boucher. All in favor?
No, I would like to make a comment. I would like to also include in the motions some comments about the design of the landscaping reflecting fire protection, etc., and the water retention on site.
So make the motion okay with that?
And that's not our purview, no.
Then I'll have to vote against the motion because it's all designed to protect a historic building.
We have already ordinances in place for fire.
I will be voting against the motion on the basis of that.
Good. So, all in favor?
Aye.
No.
Opposed?
Aye.
One in opposition. That would be Arias based on the non-inclusion of landscape comments with respect to fire and water retention. I resign. I'm ready to give up. Okay, so there you have it. Everybody understand the motion?
Yes, thank you so much.
I'm very sorry I have to vote against it, but I have principles.
Thank you. So we have to revise the report.
And sometimes my principles have to stand up. But it's a really good job.
Well, I think I want to tell Ron that you were assuming
Mr. Becker,
plan
or do you want to take these plans?
make
We have a
reference to
copy.
the plan was not real.
Those are yours, I mean.
And we have a copy.
My childhood memory serves us right. The parents were there, and I don't know when he proved from Dr. Fredfield, he saw the terrace. Yeah, but does he talk about the terrace?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think he.
Okay, next item on the agenda, please. Item number 4.
I'm here.
That's 00 East Cabrillo Boulevard. I want to remind the commission that we are a half hour behind.
Oh, sit here, bud.
I don't think so. You can put them down here, but I don't think I can handle it.
Order in the room, please. The next item is item number 400 East Cabrillo Boulevard. This is the Cabrillo Boulevard bridge replacement that was previously approved by the Historic Landmarks Commission in 2009. The city has received direction from the Planning Commission to pursue relocating the approved beachway, paved bike pedestrian path alignment next to the bridge over Mission Creek to the approved temporary beachway location. Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Hi, Chair Lavoy. Jessica Grant, Project Planner for Public Works, with me today.
Chair LaVoy, could I interrupt 1 second? Before everyone leaves the room, we found some keys at Toyota. Sorry.
That's what they were looking for. Excuse us. Okay, please.
Sitting next to me with the new Public Works staff member, she's a principal engineer of the Public Works Department. Her name is Bobby Salvini. We're excited to have her.
Welcome. We'll talk to you about it, I'm sure.
And Ms. Salvini is the project manager for the Cabrillo Boulevard Bridge project. So, what I am here to discuss today, and this for the viewers at home, the area that we're talking about is Cabrillo Boulevard over Mission Creek, adjacent to Stearns Wharf. So what we received direction from Planning Commission a couple weeks ago is to investigate relocating the existing beachway that I'm pointing with my pen here to over in this location. It's approximately 45 feet.
Excuse me a second. There was a point.
Is there? Oh, okay.
Here, this
Pen,
works,
is
but-
pen okay?
Yeah, here you
Oh,
it'll
is
show
this
up
this is a nice pen. Oh. So relocating it 45 feet to the south.
Could you give us in very
little
brief
background?
summary? Yeah.
Yes.
So what their thinking
Yes,
was?
what's going on in this area, and this is actually stemming from a 1998 report to council about the Cabrillo Beachway in its entirety. And what this particular section of the Cabrillo Beachway has is it's the highest number of conflict area of all the Cabrillo Beachway. And the issue with the conflicts are, as I'm pointing right here, this is where the land shark drops off people, the trolley, MTD bus shuttle. So you have a really a big flux of pedestrian movement, slower moving. And also what you have on the weekends is this is all the staging for the art show. And then you have the users of the beachway, the bicyclists, the rollerbladers. And what we have that we're experiencing in this area is you want to have like the fast moving users, and then there's the people that just want to sit and gaze and look out towards the wharf and the ocean, and that's where the conflicts lie. One of the recommended solutions from that 98 report was to try to separate the beachway from the sidewalk area. Is it going to solve the problem 100%? No, but it would be a big improvement, and that's what we're investigating today.
Okay, good reason.
So, in terms of visual, well, what would that look like if we're relocating the beachway? Again, this is what was approved with the Cabrillo Beach Boulevard replacement project. Again, it was replacing a structurally deficient bridge. It was approved back in 2009. We're gearing up for construction in 2013. And so what you have here is the roadway, and then you have the sidewalk, and then right adjacent is the beachway. How it looks in section, if you follow all of our pages, because I have snippets from the approved set of plans, but it's sheet 3 or page 71 of 84. So in the dashed line is the existing bridge. The proposed and the kind of darker weight line is what you would see in profile. So or in section, if you were looking this way or this way, this would be the proposed bridge. What's also important when I discuss what we would see from the beachway is what's underneath, what's the substructure look like? I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if you're looking this way or this way, this is the section here. So again, this is the sidewalk on this side, roadway, sidewalk right here, and then the beachway. So what's holding the substructure is you have your precast concrete slabs. And within that, of course, because we're a major street in Santa Barbara, there's a ton of utilities running down the street. So we have to have these voids underneath the bridge, and it's because we have so many utilities, we need to have voids in the bridge, vehicular bridge deck, the sidewalk, and our beachway to accommodate all the utilities. So if I was looking, if we were to change and then relocate this beachway, this whole section, push it 45 feet, what would you be looking at if you were standing right here? Well, this you would see, again, that's looking this way, but what you would see is about 3 feet of solid concrete. That would be the substructure. And then on page 4, then you would see 3 feet 9-inch rail on top of that. So again, we're looking at a 6-foot swath of concrete. This is the rail, again, that was approved with the vehicular bridge, beachway bridge, and these are open, so it's not a complete 6-foot solid wall. There would be openings there. And also, so let me point here. Again, so if I was standing on the sidewalk at this location looking, the top of rail from that sidewalk here would match the top of rail. I would draw an imaginary line. I'd be seeing the top of rail there. And same with the substructure. It would all match. The only thing different about when we move it 45 feet to the south, it's getting a little bit wider there, so the span would get slightly larger. And the only other thing that you would see is, depending again where you're standing, because we have a center support system for the bridge, there would be 4 piers or piles. Would it be piles? Piers. Columns. You would see those, and they would be all in a row, but they're at a 45-degree skew. So depending again where you're standing, you could either see 4 columns or you would see 1 column. Just depends where you're at. So the feedback that I would ask is for the rail, knowing that there's that 3-foot substructure of the beachway, would you go to a lighter rail? Because before and basically it would match the vehicular bridge rail. There's a reason for, the thickness for the vehicular bridge, because you don't want cars going off to the side. Cars would not be on the beachway. We would have the potential for a maintenance vehicle to have like a cherry picker in the event that they needed to get to the utility underneath the bridge, but we're not anticipating any vehicles on there. It would just be pedestrians and bicyclists. So with that, we can maybe go to a thinner type rail. And that's what we really would like your feedback on today.
So you're finished with your presentation?
Yes.
I will open public comment. I have one speaker slip, Mr. DeForest.
Chair sitting, members of the commission, just wanted to add that the original approval was for a temporary pedestrian bridge or bikeway in this location, and this would now become a permanent bridge. And the other thing that needs to be understood is that this now permanent bridge would require an abutment as well as all the other stuff that was described in that presentation. And I guess it would look similar to the abutment.
Yeah. It would be the same abutment design. as the proposed beachway.
Mr. DeForest,
Bridge.
please.
Yes. I'm just very confused over this presentation. This, I recall that there was going to be sort of a temporary bridge, but here this is a separate new bridge that doesn't exist, because right now the pathway, or whatever this is calling itself, is part of the sidewalk and part of the existing bridge. And now we have a separate bridge which is seen both from the beach and from the roadway, from Cabrillo Boulevard. And I don't quite see exactly what it's going to look like. And I would ask the Commission, one, how historic is it to fit into the EPV? And I would like to ask the project manager of this to have some renderings or photo stimulations so we can see what it's going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. See no other public, I'll close public comment and move to questions from the Commission. Commissioner Drury, any questions?
Yes. So, come on. You would remove that concrete from Cabrillo Boulevard to the terminus on both sides of the proposed bridge?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, is the question that we would remove the proposed beachway from this location for clarification? Oh, I see.
Yeah,
you're talking about this.
In yellow, those two
Yes.
angles, that would
Thank you.
become lawn?
Yes, that would be proposed to be back to lawn, so the artists that have their displays would have a larger grass area.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but thank you.
But it related to that question, but you're keeping the sidewalk.
Correct. The sidewalk would still remain,
Right.
and then
What about, I'm sorry, what about
Right.
this portion? That's going away.
yes, that would
You're
go.
keeping
That would
this and
be
moving that. Okay,
40.
thank you.
So the
Gotcha.
beachway would go 45 feet to the south, because if we kept these legs, we'd still be introducing the conflicts here.
I guess
and
I forgot
so-
that there was a actual sidewalk here. But there is
Yes.
a physical sidewalk. Okay, that answers the
There-
question. Okay, Commissioner Boucher, any questions? Okay, Commissioner Lavoie, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Down at the other end of the beach, the other side of the bathhouse, there's another creek area
Sycamore
where,
Creek, I believe it is.
yeah, where the bike path goes over the water, over the creek.
Yes.
That's a wood bridge, isn't it?
I believe I would have to confirm that. The wood, you mean for the wood rail, the
Chair,
wood
sitting member of the
railing?
Commission, I
Wood
believe it is a
railing?
wood bridge.
Yes.
Yeah, wood bridge, well, at least the railing, the physical
Correct,
parts
yeah.
of the bridge are wood.
Correct.
Have you considered using a similar thing here? You were looking for us.
We would be open to that. I think the issues is that we know what the parameters are for the substructure. One other utility that we would be looking at and that we would explore is relocating the dredge pipe underneath the beachway. And we're working with the waterfront, and we have a future meeting set up with waterfront and Army Corps of Engineers to see if that's feasible. But it is under discussion. So as long as we have the substructure of the bridge, we are open to
I think you
the
can answer this
railing.
question.
Okay,
Any
thank you.
others?
Perfect.
Commissioner Murray, questions? Commissioner Rios, any questions? Yeah, my question goes along with Mr. Lavoie's. What other material have you studied? Anything? Just the concrete?
We have, we were, before we set our consultants loose
Right,
on
yeah,
analysis, we wanted to come to you first for
Smart
some
idea.
direction.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to open public comment again and ask Ms. Lodge from the Planning Commission if she has anything to add. Thank you for coming and thank you for being here. I know that you heard the item at Planning Commission. Is there anything you wish to add at this time?
Just simply to say that it seemed a very reasonable thing to do instead of building a temporary.
Okay. I'm sorry if you need to come up. I thought maybe it was going to be brief enough that I could reiterate it, but you started to lose me there a bit. Thank you, Ms. Lodge.
Thank you, Sheila Lodge from the Planning Commission. We looked at the location more, the design is your purview. And it seemed a very reasonable thing to do instead of, and I'm not sure Ms. Grant made it quite clear that the proposal before was to build a temporary bridge and then build a new one where it is now and eliminate the temporary bridge. Well, that seemed a waste of time, energy, and funds.
Okay.
So we think that the location is a good one, and the design, and of course, that's what they're
Great.
asking
Okay.
about.
Thank you, Ms. Lodge. Appreciate you coming and spending your time with us today. I'll close public comment again and bring it back to the Commission for comments.
Chair Suding, members of the Commission, I just want to articulate staff's concern that we obtain from the Historic Landmark Commission your views on how this would change the views from the various different locations, if you are concerned that it would be a negative change and that whether it would need additional analysis or whatever. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
No.
Okay.
Comments from
Okay.
the Commission. Commissioner Drury.
My comments are that I think it's very worthwhile. I'm glad actually to see, despite my facetious comment before, that this space be opened up and that those sidewalks be removed. And I think it's just a question of how the bridge is going to look. I think pursuing wood would be a good idea, and I'm wholeheartedly for this project.
Commissioner Boucher, anything?
Wood, I think, would fit in the
Is
area.
your microphone on?
I would suggest the railing be wood.
Thank you. Commissioner Lavoie.
I agree.
I'll chime in with just a little more elaboration. I think that this bridge needs to read as a lighter bridge. It is transporting, or not transporting, it's carrying bicycles and pedestrians, possibly runners, whoever uses the beachway, and there are a lot of uses on that beachway. A vehicular bridge is a completely different animal than a causeway or a pedestrian bridge. Material-wise, I don't even feel like it has to have the slightest reference to the Cabrillo Boulevard bridge, in as much that the Cabrillo Boulevard bridge is somewhat historic. I know it's not going to be once you replace it, but it has a historic quality to it that the pedestrian bridge or beachway should not really reference, or there should be differentiation, I think. I feel pretty strongly about that, and the rest of the commissioners can voice their opinions on that. But number one, it's carrying a different type of transportation. Number two, it shouldn't compete with the Cabrillo Street Bridge, so whatever that material is.
Okay.
Commissioner Murray, did you have any additional comments?
Just from the historical point of view, I really think it's going to be an obstruction to the view, not to the way that the former bridge is, and but at the same time, I understand the concerns. I don't know. The other commissioners have mentioned smaller bridge, a wooden bridge. I don't know. Whatever happens is probably has to be something that if you were looking at going across a creek or something that, but it has to blend in a way that it just doesn't deter from that view of, that corridor is an important corridor. And the way it is now, however, it's all the competition of users, it's still that Olmsted view of what, so I'm just having a lot of concern about how that would be. So I obviously cannot support this kind of proposal. This is just, I couldn't.
Okay.
But if it's something that one knows that this is like like sort of like what when you go on hiking trails and you cross a creek, something really, really under the radar, so to speak. That's my concern. But then you have the other concerns of protection of equipment and all that. I don't know. I just don't know how the two would work.
Commissioner Murray, may I ask you a question? Are you concerned about if the Beachway is relocated to this location, are you concerned about the view out to the ocean, or are you concerned about the view back to Cabrillo Boulevard?
Both, because when you get on the Stearns Wharf and you look out that way, there's a certain view. And then you go out to the highway and you look down, there's a certain view, and it's just good to go back to the Olmsted plan and really see how that works. And I just have a hard time to say, okay, well, this because it works, by pedestrian way, it's okay.
I think one way to look at it, too, perhaps another way to look at it is that locating the Beachway to this location, 45 feet basically south of the bridge, would actually expose more people to the understructure, the side of this bridge, and have more view into that bridge. But that's just sort of a side note. I just thought that was kind of.
When you're on the Stearns Wharf and look at that,
that's more what you're concerned. Yeah.
You see a formal promenade. This is a boulevard scene.
Yes.
This is not exactly going over small, creeks.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Reese. Any comments?
I think we need more design or more photographs or ideas of how the views are going to be affected before I can really make a decision on it.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Drury.
The only comment just came. I was looking at these frequency of floods, and there's the usual 20, 50, and 100, and they don't have any relevance in real life. In other words, a overtopping flood is 5,500 cubic feet per second going through that area, and whatever is built, of course, has to withstand that. And then the problem is that people like myself would want to go on that bridge when a flood occurs to see stuff coming down the creek. I mean, that's just yeah. Well, what I mean, I think Commissioner Arias has exactly the right idea, that we need to see what I'm assuming is going to be built to withstand all these because a 100-year flood comes every few years here. So we need to see that, and I think we also what is on top of that, which the public will see. We need to see the designs, your ideas, so we can wait.
Yeah. Well, this is really just comments only, so I think you have enough comments to go off of, and you're on your way.
Okay. Mr. Chair, just for point of clarification, so my understanding when we come back is, again, just showing a visual analysis of the substructure that's required, and then exploring wood railing on top. And the other items that we would need to get addendums on are the biological reports, cultural resource, and then for flood, we have to make sure it matches the 3400 CFS of the Lower Mission Creek Flood Control Project. We do not see that as an issue, but so anyway, that's
also
when we
what I
move-
would like you to do, and I think I heard some of the other commissioners say, is to bring photographs looking back at this location. So from Stearns Wharf, what does it look like? From further down the boulevard, what does it look like?
Okay.
Makes sense. So
Yeah.
looking, we often ask that. What does it look like off-site? From off-site.
From the base of Mission Creek at the ocean, looking straight back.
That's a good photograph as well. So I think you're on your way. You've got your work cut out for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you have anything?
Jessica, may he have his pen back?
Yes, oh yeah, that's a nice pen.
I just don't have expectations.
I don't know what happened to the pointer. I think it might have, no, it might have gotten folded up in the drawings.
It's not a pajama.
I didn't do anything with it. I have suspect it got
I think they
Yeah.
understood.
Okay, that.
Not to fear, I do have the backup. Oh, here it is. Fermina was hiding it. She was. There it is. Phew. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is item number 5, and that's 2300 Garden Street. This is a proposal to legalize the following as-built conditions. 1,205 linear feet of security fencing, 1,447 linear feet of temporary construction fencing, more fencing, drinking fountains, outdoor sink, steps, and handrail. All of the fun stuff. We have drawings. They're getting them.
And the only change in these were the things that Susan had asked to be put on them from what was filed.
Okay, if you could introduce yourself for the record.
I am Mary Rose, and I am representing the San Roque School
And a
Charitable
brief presentation,
Trust.
please.
And a brief presentation. You have seen this project many times before, but not recently.
Okay. Let's keep moving on.
Shall we tell you what has been done?
Let's keep moving on. I want to remind the Commission that we are 25 minutes behind.
And I will try to be quick. I have photos of everything which was requested.
Yes.
But in essence, if we could turn to page 2, this is the site layout. You've looked at the site as it relates to each of the buildings, and you've looked at the site once overall as related to utilities and things. And as things have progressed, some of the construction fencing the owner would like to have become permanent fencing. There is still some temporary construction fencing on the site, and there has been, because of the school use, need for some security fencing and also some safety fencing. So the best way is probably to sort of walk through the site. This is, and one of the concerns that existed was, what was the change to the entryway? This was the entryway in 2005. This is the entryway today. Very, very similar. There has been landscaping changes on the other side of the road, which belongs to the Mission. That may have been of some confusion to people who were looking at it. They changed and added Bird of Paradise to sort of mirror what was on the other side. So we have those. Now, the fencing along here is, this area is, it's a 4-foot fence. There always was a 4-foot fence here, which was landscaped, and you didn't really see it. This is a 4-foot fence. It is designed to be landscaped. You really do not, it will eventually go away, as you can see in these pictures. It is designed to go away. This is a picture from here looking up at it, and here is a picture from on here. There is additional fencing along here. This is an 8-foot security fencing, and it goes along the perimeter. From the exterior of the property, because these are such large bushes, you do not see this fence from the exterior at this point. I will admit and acknowledge you do see the security fence at this point, and that is kind of as it exists. This is an electrical box that is still providing temporary power to these portables, and it will go away when they go away. And they will go away. There is additional fencing. This fencing here, existed fencing here, it's been replaced and again comes around. Again, it's an 8-foot fence. It blends in very well with most of the landscaping, hides most of that fence. And this is the area back up in here. And this is a private driveway. This is a private driveway that is shared between the mission and the school, and it always has had a trash location here, and it's always had some fencing back here. So this fencing is new. Again, it's providing a perimeter security fencing. This play area was fenced in to provide a secure play area, and that tree was added as a little bit of shading for that area. So these are just more copies of those photos. And if I'm going too quickly, I'm trying to do what you asked me to do, which was go quickly.
No, I said brief.
Brief.
Say quickly. I said brief.
Brief. Well, we're going.
All right.
All right. I'll
Continue.
take a deep breath. In the rear here, the fencing along the back, the green fencing on these plans is temporary construction fencing, and it still is. And there has been, for a long time they were using box trees, and they've ended up planting many of them because they weren't doing well in the boxes, but there's still just a temporary screen to the area. So this is looking here. You can see where we've got, again, just screening some in planters, some planted. This is looking here at the shop building. Shop building is still up on stilts, and they've landscaped around it to hide basically the security, the construction fence, the security fence to keep people out of the construction area, because this is in use as a school, and it's used that way every day. The chapel area, again, it's just construction fencing behind. There has been, and this shows that there's, again, still this is construction fencing in this area. So, let's see. There's, again, this area, we have an approved landscape plan for this area. It has not yet been installed because we do not have occupancy finished and construction done on this building. And so to keep it in a clean and neat method, this also involves some fairly extensive ADA access when they get occupancy of the building. So instead of dealing with people walking on grass and the area that had to be torn up to do some of the construction work, pavers have basically, we have flagstone for walking here, and that will be replaced once, again, the project in this whole area is finished. And you can see in some instances there's planters, and in other instances they were installed. Plants were installed here. All this concrete had to be ripped out to put in the utility trenching, and right now, just for safety and for aesthetics, until it's finished, it's got bark and other things on it. So that's again in temporary. The plan is that it would be finished that the whole site would be finished by March of 2014. We are getting there. Another safety issue that you haven't seen, because the school is being used as a school, and they found that this was an unsafe condition in front of the school building. This is the rock wall here, and they did install a guardrail that, and you have detailed drawings of the guardrail there, but there's some photos of how it looks compared to the existing handrails, and then how it blends in, because it blends in behind the landscaping there. So that was that. They have, again, because of the temporary and under construction, some of the bathrooms and other things, they've installed another temporary water closet. This is on wheels, and it is screened away. It's here so that the kids out on the field can have access to a bathroom. So this is what it looks like sort of from the long view of the lawn. And then it is screened in, and it's got the access ramps. Kind of separate from that, there are two sinks and water fountains, again, so the kids who are out on the play field have access to the facilities. And they are, again, screened from the lawn area. You do not see them. They are They're back behind that planter. So those are there. So those are the sinks, the lawns. The other, and again, it was a safety issue. This was a grass ramp that came up here, and it was getting slippery, and it was getting steep, and ultimately, this is part of the ADA path of travel that will come up here and cut through here. So this is what they did for safety, is they installed, and again, they're removable for the historians. They can be removed if needed. And a railing, and then again another railing.
So these cheek walls were already here?
Yes, yes. Those were already there. They were, yeah. So all they did was install the treads and the risers. And then there's a little gravel path that leads up in here, which will be eventually part of the path of travel, keeping people off of the driveway here. Let's see. The other sort of major thing that was done on the site is they did cut out some of this asphalt here to create a new planting bed, and the fire department has approved. You'll see that this is an access, and they have their access and their turnarounds here. And this area is. These aren't the greatest drawings. There's a little more of an elevation on the next page if you want to look at that, but we can look at the photos first. It's a full-size tree was planted there. And then there is some signage, and we will be going to the sign committee for approval on that. But and you can see it. This is looking at it from the driveway, and this is looking at it from this direction.
Where'd you get such a funny shaped jacaranda?
The trustee had it. The trustee had it. And then this is looking down here, as some of this has been infilled as well. I have other photos of some of this landscaping, which was done essentially to, again, create a barrier between a barrier between the construction area and the school area. Again, it's a planted border. You can see along here, and then from down here looking at this is from down here looking at the main building. This little area was planted, and they asked me to be thorough, so we're showing you all of the areas here. So this was, again, landscaped in. There had always been a sign here. It had been middle school's sign, and basically...
And this leads to the Hoffman property?
Yes. Mm-hmm. That is right. That is this gate right here.
Okay.
Again, they were trying to differentiate usage areas from areas that were still in construction and other areas. They planted a little row of hedges here and another tree here. It's right there. And then this lawn area, so it's looking at that. And then this is just really the as-built conditions here. There were some fruit trees here that were designated to move. They've moved over here. This has been planted in. There's been another jacaranda in some of these areas. So I'm just going to run through that. This shows where the fruit trees were planted here, and they've got some little sitting area. And this was the landscaping that was approved as part of the portables and the sports court. So you can see how it's filled in. Or not. And then, again, this is just another view of that front driveway coming in. And this is the ADA ramp that you approved coming in through here. And then, so that's the ADA ramp in front of the refectory building right here. And the refectory building, you had approved this to become an outdoor courtyard outside this classroom. I think you remember that. And when they got into construction, and it had a stairway here, they ended up not completing this yet, the courtyard, the little outdoor courtyard of that classroom. And so it's just an as-built, here's the door and the stairway, and that gave them the exiting that they were required to have. And then they've planted some climbing roses on the front of the building. There were vines on the building in the past. I honestly don't know what they were before. So, and then next we have, this area had been approved as a laydown yard and an equipment yard, and it had been fenced very close to the road. And as things have changed and progressed, it ended up starting to be used as temporary parking, as parking wasn't available here, or here at different times. And so our request is that they have moved back the fence, and our request is that this be allowed to be used as school parking for the next, during the construction period, to end no later than March of 2014. It is a gravel driveway. It would hold 29 spaces. All of the construction parking is still located over at the Mission, but we're asking that this be allowed to be used for temporary parking until these parking areas can be restored. And it is screened with a green fence. This is photos. This is the interior of the lot. Again, it is, has a green fence. And then these were ones I took this morning. The fence, you do see the fence from the road, but you do not see a lot of the fence from the road. And so, again, the walkway, the details on it, the water closet, the landscaping, the planter here area, and then all the plants. This little infill area was also added, and that's just security to. This is the refectory and the main building. So
Sounds like you're done.
is what that's what's happened and what we'd like to.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rose. I will open public comment. First to speak is Mr. Fred Sweeney. Following Mr. Sweeney will be W. Scott Burns, and then Kellen DeForest. Mr. Sweeney.
Here. That one?
Turn on the microphone, please.
Is it on?
Nope. There you go.
Push. It's on.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll be very brief. I'm here representing Fred Sweeney. I'm here representing the Board of Directors of the Upper East Association.
Thank you.
Which represents approximately 200-plus households on the Upper East Side.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
We did notice that this project was on the agenda. One of our members attempted to try to find these and see these drawings earlier in the week and was not able to get to the source. So one of the things the board would request is before you take formal action that we have the opportunity to be able to actually look at these documents and provide comments. There are obviously, in our minds, several questions about the length of some of these things, particularly the portables that will remain there. We understand from the presentation a few minutes ago, it appears to be March of 2014, but also some questions about what happens when the construction parking lot goes away, et cetera. So there's several questions we still have, and we'd certainly like the opportunity and consideration of that, and we'd be prepared to attend the next appearance of this project to the board with our comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Burns, followed by Mr. DeForest.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Burns. I live at 2319 Garden Street.
Welcome.
I'm also on the Park and Rec Commission, so I'm going to leave relatively soon to go to that meeting. My basic comment is what is being called construction fencing and safety fencing and security fencing. When this first started 4 to 6 years ago, I live directly across the street, but I don't remember when it started. It was construction fencing that was going up only for during the construction period. And now reading the document, it sounds like construction fencing is now safety fencing and security fencing, and there was that's not what got approved, and I really think you ought to look at this at the big view, and saying the big view is not, unfortunately, these 5 or 6 items one after another, but actually look at possibly getting a conditional use permit and find out exactly what is being planned here, and let the community talk about it, not in just a short hearing. So I am hoping we have more time to talk about this and find out exactly what's going on here. That's my comments.
Appreciate you coming, Mr. Burns. Mr. DeForest.
Thank you. Thank you.
Put your microphone on. Thank you.
Killam DeForest. I'll be more. I will be more specific in that this fencing issue is. It says here that there's security fencing, temporary construction fencing, safety fencing, and I don't recall it. And this is in the EPV, and these fencing look very ordinary and commercial, and I thought the EPV has fencing guidelines, and I don't think these fall into the guidelines. Also, as an EPV, and I'll put this back here now, that treatment of steps certainly does not fit the EPV guidelines. That's very, very contemporary.
He's referring to the stairs replacing the grass pathway.
Yeah, the new stairs, and I gather they want those approved also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Seeing no other public, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the Commission for questions, or staff. Mr. Lamone.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point out 3 things that staff would like you to remind you as you review this property. The property is, as you know, very significant. It's eligible for landmark and probably National Register status. So maybe there should be a statement of the conditions that you placed on the property with respect to landscape maintenance. It said, no alterations shall be made without approval from the Commission. So as we go forward in understanding what's important that needs to be reviewed prior to having it done, that would be something that we'd want to clarify as far as respect to the grounds. And then secondly, the issue of temporary. Temporary has been multi-years here, and a clarification of some concerns that have been expressed from the neighborhood about temporary power poles and services that possibly could go away if we have the permanent electrical installations in place. Some of these poles that have been placed temporarily that are closer to the front of the property would be a concern about how long they remain. And then finally, the issue with respect to the clarity of how much work requires compliance because it's temporary with our guidelines. So something Mr. DeForest raised. I think if you place a limit on these items, then it's very clearly understood that they will go away versus how long they stay.
Question for you, Mr. Lamone. What about allowing more time for the Upper East Neighborhood Upper East Association Board to take a look at the plans? Is that something that we can?
Yes,
Okay.
that would be consistent
I think the
with
commissioners need to be sensitive to that as
Right.
well.
Because there is a short time frame before the viewing,
Right.
and we don't renotice these projects. So
Yeah, no, and this is a large part of the Upper East. This is a big piece of property. Commissioner Drury, any questions?
Well, it's only, I have many questions.
Microphone?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have many questions. This is kind of
Eerily reminiscent of some of the presentations of the El Encanto project, and that we were just given many things all at once, and I think it's personally too much to digest. The only specific question I have is this on page 4 of the photos, the as-built gate, which goes right onto Garden Street, I suspect.
Right there, please.
Page 4.
Yeah, we got it. I'm just trying to get it.
As-built, it's a term. Could you explain that?
It's there today. That's, I mean, what we're looking at here is something that was installed and you have not reviewed. And it's one of the reasons a number of things have been thrown at you. And I think a little bit of it is the owner making changes as needed for the school. And then also, unfortunately, with the loss of George Machine last year, some things maybe didn't get translated as well. And I'm not trying to excuse anything. It's just a little bit of, to address your throwing everything at you. We were asked to put everything on one set of plans, even if it had been approved in a different set of plans. So
Now
I
is the time to
apologize
sort
for
of bring
that.
all this piecemeal stuff together, so that's why we are.
I understand.
Yeah. But we can go through it any other way you want.
No, that's fine. I'll say, that's my only single question, and I'll save my comments.
Okay, Commissioner Boucher, any questions? No. Lavoie, any questions? Commissioner Lavoie?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Murray, any questions?
Mr. Chair? Go ahead.
Commissioner Murray, okay. Commissioner Boucher?
I just have one question.
I have a question. Is your microphone on?
Thank you, Counselor. It says here that all items called out as temporary will be removed by March 31st, 2014. Is it possible that some of them will be removed before that?
Yes, yes. This has been, as you know, a very complex construction project. It's had to be done in phases around, and then now around school. And again, many of the conditions were different once they got the walls opened. There was less structural support. So it has taken longer than originally anticipated. Our original goal was to be done by the end of 2014, so it's really another 18 months that we're looking at.
Well, it's interesting that my grandchildren started here and are now, my granddaughter's graduating from university, so it's gone on a long, long time.
Well, they started probably middle school, and then it changed, but in any case. Thank you for that reference. Commissioner Murray, any questions?
Do you anticipate, can you say to us, okay, in this corner, I can tell you that it's receiving work and it will be done at this time. Could that is possible, or is this just sort of the work just goes on and on?
Well, the refectory building is done, but the work is proceeding right now on the main building, and needs to return to to finish the gymnasium and the exteriors of some of those. So I could not today tell you exactly a schedule. And I'm not sure because, again, as they've gotten into things, something causes them to okay, we've got a structural situation over here. We need to go back and rethink this, so then they can go and do something else. But they are, working very mindfully and planfully. And again, there's a school going on.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rios, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the parking spaces on gravel. What happens when that goes away? Does the gravel stay?
No, it will go back to being the lawn.
It will go back to being
the lawn.
My concern rests with what happens if you don't make the March 24th deadline. I mean, this is, as Mrs. Boucher said, it's gone on for a long time. And I think the neighbors want to see it done, finished, completed.
Believe me, I think the owner wants to see it done.
Well, that may be, but I think I very strongly think that perhaps you should consider a very serious timetable
yes,
to be presented.
Any other questions from anybody? How about some comments? Anyone?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lavoie.
I would suggest that nothing nothing temporary become permanent, no matter how historic it becomes over the years. Particularly and including the gate from Garden Street, perimeter fencing, which is unacceptable in the district, and any other things that have been added on to the site plumbing fixtures, temporary classrooms, is they sort of lighting poles, utility poles, parking areas, landscape planting, electrical utilities. The trees, I remember the discussion, the box trees were to shield the temporary classrooms, not to screen the front of the building. We don't want the front of that building screened from the lawn area. We also don't want the front of the chapel screened. Yeah, you don't want trees planted in front of the chapel, period. And so even that one that was temporary might have to be removed because we didn't approve a plan. This building has landmark status. Any changes need to be approved prior to installation, no matter how small. I would also request of staff to initiate the process for landmarking this building. We've been talking about it for decades now. It's time to start. We have deferred to the owner for long enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Could this be put on the agenda for the Designations Committee next week?
Madam Chair, we will discuss that at the Designation Subcommittee, the priorities that you've set.
Okay. Any other comments that differ from Commissioner Lavoie?
Yes, I would like to add that these plans have a chance to be reviewed by neighbors.
Yes.
And I also, I guess I would like to see some sense of priorities. I also was not getting, you said security fence and that fence, and I had a hard time really following what were the justifications for that.
We're not discussing here.
Oh, anyway, that.
So make it clear what the justifications are. So, Gloria, do you have enough of those comments, or do you need me to paraphrase it? Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, one other thing?
Yes.
That a proposal for permanent security fencing be proposed before we consider temporary.
Okay, so come up with a design for a permanent security fence.
The design that is on this plan that's marked security fence is the owner's proposal for security fencing.
We must
It's not acceptable.
Okay. Okay.
And could you give me, because it's a school, and I know you don't like mesh fencing and that, but by the code, in a school, and there has historically been mesh fencing on there, and I'm looking also at the municipal code, that a school, any open mesh fence to enclose an elementary or high school site may be located and maintained in any required yard. So the owner is trying to balance all of these things.
Yeah.
So that's a question that I know the owner does have.
I'm not familiar with the security fencing having to be mesh. That just doesn't seem.
We just did one at Notre Dame School.
Yeah. Okay.
Just that staff investigate that and find out exactly what is approvable and not.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be helpful, thank you.
That would be the duty of the architect, to be both familiar with security requirements and requirements of the landmark.
And that is where they made this proposal to you.
Both need to do it. I think staff needs to become aware of it, and the architect
As long as
well.
it's in ordinances, I would assume that staff would look at it.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion for a 2-week continuance? Made by Boucher, second by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. There you have it. So you definitely need to get with the Upper East Neighborhood or Upper East Association Board.
Yes.
I'm going to call for a 5-minute break. I apologize to applicant number 6, 27 Lane Avenue, but you'll probably like us better if we have a little bit of a break. Review It's a proposal to install 2 level 2 electric vehicle charging stations in an existing city-owned public parking lot. Okay.
So I
If you
brought
introduce
that-
yourselves for the yourself.
Hi,
for the
Aurelia
record.
Parento with the City of Santa Barbara's Facilities Division.
Welcome.
Thank you. I brought back last week's packets, or last meeting's packets, just in case you wanted to reference those. But I also brought a large photo of the pole-mounted charger, which is what the board specified they were leaning towards, as well as dimensions.
What's Hispanic about this?
Some commission members.
Some commission members, sorry, thank you. Yeah, exactly. I did inquire about other finish potential. No options for finish. We can't paint them. No, that's all right. And there are no other colors. They only come in the aluminum. So that was your main question last time I was here.
I don't have any comments on this, Mr. Lemo.
Well, why would I give it to you?
I don't know. Why would you give it to me?
What was in the file? I'm sorry. I didn't read it.
Not my file.
Forwarded by Mrs. Gant's attention.
Yes. I'm like, okay. Thoroughly lacking, but you're doing a wonderful job, Mr. Lemo. Susan, please come back. Okay, so.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner LaVoy.
What can you do to make this fit the guidelines?
Can
Not a whole lot, I'm afraid.
you change color?
We cannot change color. The pole could potentially be a different color.
Yes, I did. Did we really say pole mode?
We did, yeah.
You did. Okay.
I believe
Is there any way we
others.
can give this an exemption?
Mr. Lavoy, my belief, based on conversations with our city attorney, is that guidelines can be modified by this commission, and you can make whatever rationale for those. Well, it is. There's no prohibition per se. It's not like a sign. There are guidelines that prohibit plastic contemporary finishes. If you can't come up with an alternative, I think there is a basis to say, just like a gas station, there's a gas station that comes in that has a very contemporary means to dispense.
That's part of our
And-
fear, or my fear too, is that that this sort of sets. If we make an exemption, this sort of sets a precedent. These could be popping up in more and more locations.
That's highly likely. So again, there's a balance between also understanding that the industry typically puts out things that sometimes there's not diversity when they first come out, and how difficult it would be to try to refabricate something that doesn't exist yet.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, why can't we have this powder coated a different color?
It's part of the contract. These are being given to the city under a grant agreement, and we are not able to modify them.
Huh.
Mr. Chair, here's the previous motion, sorry.
Okay, thank you. I'll read.
One other question.
Yes.
Are these a permanent installation?
In theory, yes. I
No,
mean,
they're going to come out at 2014.
We're
March
hoping that
2014.
they're permanent.
And there's only 2 of them at this point.
There's only 2 at this lot. They're being mounted at other internal lots where there's not HLC concern.
Okay, Mr.
have
Chair, I'd
another
like to
question.
suggest something then.
Sure.
I have another question.
Oh, question by Commissioner
Sorry.
Murray.
Can I ask my question?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yes, Commissioner.
Let's say that we go back to this. Oh, thank you. Let's say that you go back. Can you put this sign here? Like I don't know, just this sign like over here or here.
Apparently, they cannot modify this.
We can attach a sign to it. We can't modify the actual station. I mean, I'm sure we can attach. I don't know about attaching it on the front, but I don't.
Or
know if we can put it on top.
could it be painted on or something or
Silk screen or something.
so silk screen or something?
I'd have to ask the contractor, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's my question.
Okay.
That's it's no more Hispanic than any one of the power poles that have been mounted in the city, right?
True.
This is an experiment.
No.
And no, it is, because we at this point, it's an experiment. We don't know how many more of these we're going to get. And then probably if we allow 2 to be installed, and if they're used, we're going to get more of them. If they're not used, they're going to go away.
Correct.
So I think of that as an experiment. So if we accept 2 of these, and the simplest installation possible with the minimal amount of signage or signage attached to it, and accept only 2 of them, and if there's any more coming in the future, knowing that we are going to require that they be painted either dark green or black, proceed at least with this much of it.
Okay, if this is an experiment, then how about we conditionally approve this with a relook or a reexamination in whatever 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, I don't care, whatever you pick. But I think it's worthwhile for us, if this is an experiment, like you say, which I don't think it is, because if these aren't used, I bet you they are not going away. If they are not used, I bet you they are not going to go away. They're going to stay there, and they're going to be vandalized and not maintained.
The city will remove them.
Whatever. I don't think they will remove them if they're on a pedestal. I mean, you've got
just on bolt the thing at the bottom and cap them.
Well, in any case, I think that we should conditionally approve this with a time limit on it, and it was suggested that 2 years be an acceptable time. And what are we approving the pole-mounted?
I have a preference for...
Okay, then let's take a straw vote. Who prefers the pole-mounted charge point apparatus? Raise your hands, please. 2. Okay. Then I'm assuming that 3 people are in favor of the pedestal mount with the sign mounted to the actual apparatus.
Yes.
Okay. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, so 3 are in favor of the pedestal mount. And I think the comments are that the commission conditionally approves these 2 charging station in this location with the signs mounted to the unit.
Or painted on.
And the approval is good for 2 years.
And?
Is that acceptable to staff?
I think we need a date.
And, 2 years. And, Mr. Chair, that any future installations be more sensitive to the landmarks requirements.
Okay.
Yes, but I think we need a date.
Okay, then my question, before we arrive at a date, my question to Mr. Limon, is it acceptable for us to put a 2-year conditional approval on this?
It is and it is not. Let me explain to you where there are limits. My understanding is if you label it a temporary installation, it's a little bit more clear that there is a finite time limit. That's not what's being proposed. This is a permanent installation that's being proposed. That being said, that you can place some type of condition that revisits whether there's other technology available. We do that with...
That's kind of where I was getting at, yeah.
With the wireless facilities to some degree where they want to expand and the technology changes, so then we have more available. We'll have an opportunity to see what other communities are doing. That, I think, with that understanding, but not to the point where you expect it to be removed.
No. Okay. I should have made myself more clear. I am anticipating that technology is going to change. These may get very much smaller. These may have the ability to change color, change, different technology advances rapidly in this day and age. So I should have made myself more clear. But those are the comments. We could go for final approval if the commission so wishes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Lavoie, second by Drury for the pedestal mount charging station. With all the,
it's going out for signature today, out with a pole mount, so I need to go change that.
Sorry about that.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. You vote no. Okay, I'm sorry. There's one vote opposed, and that's Commissioner Boucher. Okay, next item on the agenda is the last item, which is number 7, 530 Chapala Street. This is proposal for a legal change of use from a tire store to office use, replacement of doors and windows, a new trash enclosure, new parking lot with associated landscape. This is the second project review. Project requires compliance with the Chapala Street design guidelines. Project was last reviewed on March 14th.
Hugh Twybow, architect for the project.
Yes.
Steve Dalpozo, Tom Lane.
Welcome. Welcome.
So I got bigger photographs. There's a complaint. I hope those are big enough.
No, much appreciated. What we weren't getting was a good close-up of this, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Continue with your presentation.
Okay. You
Never mind any of those people that are talking when they shouldn't be.
You have your magic wand.
What is the problem with that? Okay. Yes. All right. I'll read the previous comments. It was continued 2 weeks. The owner's care of this building and sensitivity to the historic resource is appreciated. The applicant is strongly encouraged to pursue landmark status. Add descriptive call-outs such as existing and proposed on the drawing to make it more clear. Study the location and especially the configuration of the trash enclosure. Consider the use of a graffiti minimizing surface wherever possible. Consider stormwater management for the site. There should be more consistency in the light fixtures. Study adding a finial to the top of the tower. Study changing the roll-up doors to another color. The landscape should be sensitive to the security of the site. Study adding vine pockets to the walkway to soften the building. And explore eliminating the need for truncated domes by incorporating curbs and planters as applicable.
Okay.
There you have it.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. First one, we appreciate the compliment by the board, and we are trying to preserve the building as much as we can in its initial form. The landmark status, I've got a call into Alex Cole. I wanted to talk to her a little bit about it before we go any further with that, because there's some tax implications and things. I don't want to find out everything for the client before we just jump into doing that.
Okay.
Well, they already told us at planning that we can use that because we are on the state list, but we're only potentially. Yeah, so we may go further.
My comment, you can, if it's on the potential.
Oh,
you can.
You can. I did go through and call out the existing proposed, and it's on the drawings. Called out existing windows, existing doors. We got rid of the truncated domes across here and across here, and we still have them here and here because those are access points to the parking lot. We added a planter across here, so we've got curb here now and a sidewalk along here. This planter was in this area. We extended it down here, and this is large enough to get a bicycle parking in, so we thought that would be tucked behind the planting. It's under that awning, so it's under cover, and nobody's going to be walking through there. In the trash area, I moved the wall that I originally indicated here over to the edge of the building here, and you'll see that in the elevations. And they have a mailbox here now that's kind of sticking out by itself, and I incorporated that back in here as well as the trash. So I think this area is a little bit cleaner than it was. It isn't quite as broken up. Let's see, graffiti minimizing surfaces. I don't know how we're going to minimize those. We have the surfaces that are there. We're not really adding anything.
Okay, that's fine.
Stormwater management, I talked to a civil engineer about that, and I got a detail from him. And what we're proposing to do is a swale along this area with permeable pavers in here. We'll drain the parking lot across. The catch in here. What doesn't go into here will go into here, and then we'll have overflows that go out to the street. The light fixtures, the applicant would like to keep the existing light fixtures that we've got along here. Well, I'm sorry, not here. We don't have one here, but here, as well as the older one there.
Let's just look at those real quick in the
And I think that
photographs.
if we had the old photographs,
Those
I
are
think it shows
here,
better
here.
that they're, yeah, these are the existing
There,
ones.
there.
We need to add a fixture back in here, I think. I don't believe there's one back in there.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to get those
Yeah, that's okay.
in our memory.
I added a finial to the top of the tower. You'll see that in the elevations. And I came up with a color, or suggested a color for the overhead doors. This is the color of the trim, existing wood and the doors. This is approximately the color of the walls that are out there. And then I was thinking of going to maybe like almost like a gunmetal color, which would be a tone it down from the bright aluminum, and then paint that. We'd have to prime them and paint them. But that would be the suggestion that I have for those.
I think that's going to go a long way to make those doors sort of recede.
Yeah, it was suggested maybe that we paint them the green, but I almost think it might be too much green.
Yeah.
And then the landscaping should be sensitive to the security of the site. I think Judy or Rhea suggested that we keep it low, and so we've done that. I've done that all the way around in here as well as here and in here. So the only area that's kind of exposed, or it could be potential problem, is back in here, but I tried to keep everything low for that. And then the vine pockets, I looked at maybe adding them in here, but this is our 4-foot handicap access, and we're right at the limits here for the parking. We have 57.5 feet, and we've got 5 feet here for the planter, so we really don't have any room for anything to encroach. I looked at doing them in here, but this is a bond beam that goes all the way across, and so it's integral to the building, and I really didn't want to tear that up, so I didn't add any planters to the building. The other thing was the applicant wasn't real happy about having some kind of vines stuck on the building, partly for maintenance and just partly to leave it open.
Okay.
On the elevations, the changes were the finial, which we'd have a little, like a little capital up here, I guess you'd call it, with a rod with some decoration on that. This is the wall for the trash that I came right off the corner of the building, and I went around and looked at a bunch of buildings by Roland Salter, and he likes these little OG guys, and there was only these and these on the building, and so I thought on the wall I'd keep it simple and just do a lengthened one there and bring it out like that. This is the planting that we've got up against that wall. The bike parking would be here. Again, we've got the doors here, and then this is the trash enclosure with the mailboxes that you would see if you were back in here looking.
Which we never will be.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
most likely.
never know.
Never know. No,
You
you're
might
right. It might be my office someday.
Yeah. And then this is the landscape plan. I went to the Parks Department, and they want us to put a jacaranda in this existing planter. And we've got an existing planter here with a king palm. And they want these on 20 feet center, so we've got 4 more palm trees that we need to put out there for street trees. Over in here, what I did was I did a Phormia Maori Chief, which is kind of a darker Maori New Zealand flax. I did those here and here. I've got the dwarf Miriam oleanders, little reds here. I did deities below those. And then along here, I did
Phormium tricolor.
Tricolor. And in front of that, I did a limas, which is a gray foliage. The ground cover, I called out as gazania, white trailing gazania. I may have another one that I was looking at for that, and that would be in here. And then over in this area, I used dwarf Italian cypress, and then Anagaxanthus in between, and then a white bougainvillea on the wall.
Okay.
And then this is the bioswale. I didn't want to get into a lot of grasses and things, and so I wanted to keep it just simple, make it a little more formal. I thought if I got into a real big variety of grasses,
yeah,
it
I
might
agree.
look a little too rural. So,
Okay.
I think
That's pretty much it. Okay, questions from the commission? Commissioner Drury?
Have you thought of, first of all, let me thank you for these drawings again.
Oh.
They're just beautiful.
Thank you.
Have you thought of maybe instead of gunmetal gray, like a gunmetal green in that same middle value?
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah.
A gunmetal. You mean
Well, it'd be just
a little
it
more
was
green
just a
in the
grade, yeah, just a little more green
Okay.
in that gray. I think.
It's a warm gray. I don't know. I could go to a cool gray, I guess.
Yeah, Mr. Drury, why don't you take it outside?
Do that.
Take it outside.
They just want me out of the room.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about you. Okay. Commissioner Boucher, any questions for you? Commissioner Murray, any questions for you? Okay. I just have, I think, one question.
Oh, I forgot. Olives and Jack.
Yeah. I know the Lamus will do okay in a bioswale situation. I'm not convinced that the Formium will.
They grow in bogs.
That's
in New
right.
Zealand.
They do. You're right. You're absolutely right.
I've actually gone to New
Thank
Zealand.
you.
I was surprised to see
No, you're right.
them
You're
growing.
absolutely. That just occurred to me as it was coming out my mouth.
And it actually said in the description for this one that they're one of the ones that will take more of that condition
You're
than
right.
a lot of the other ones.
You're right.
That's
You're
why-
absolutely right. Then the second question I have is, why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing to the sidewalk to bring it into compliance with
Okay.
the Chapala Street guidelines?
It was suggested by Ms. Hands that we go look at the Chapala Street guidelines.
Uh-huh.
And the guidelines say that to use, I think there's 16-inch square concrete pavers on a diamond pattern.
Uh-huh.
So I talked, and then she said to talk to the transportation engineer. So I talked to the transportation engineer, and they went round and round. Finally, they said, go see what Jeff Shelton did across the street. So I went across the street, and Jeff Shelton put in 2x2 colored concrete squares on a grid, not on a diamond.
Right.
And so I went back and I told Susan, I said, this is what Jeff Shelton did. And she goes, I said, it doesn't sound like transportation is following the Chapala Street guidelines very
Great.
well. And she goes, well, I'll talk to my boss,
Supervisor,
the supervisor. And I guess Jaime said that they've made some changes.
Yeah, we have an
Mr.
addendum.
Lamone, yes.
The addendum is ready for council action
Oh.
on the things to do list.
Okay. So what I did was in the area where we have to replace the curb cuts, we're doing colored concrete with a 2x2 grid in hopes that in the future the rest of the street will follow suit.
Okay.
Um,
And you're doing the Omaha tan, I believe?
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know if
You
I
called that
can-
out on the site plan.
Okay, that's the.
Okay.
And then I was going to carry that in here.
Okay. So comments, I believe Commissioner Drury wants to comment on the color.
Yes.
Microphone.
I think it's just great. Color's fine.
Okay.
And I guess my other comments therefore would be that I'm pleased you didn't put in vine pockets. I think the building is really a neat building, and
Yeah, I
I'd
kinda-
love
I
to
kinda
see.
feel
I'd
that
like
way
to
too.
see the building itself. You could even maybe be more restrained. I very much appreciate what you did for the trash enclosure. You could even be more restrained in the landscaping there. I'd like to see that angle. I think it's
Okay.
terrific, and all in all, I think it's a terrific project.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh. All right. Okay, then I'm going to start with comments. Open public comment. Mr. DeForest, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, my slip got away, but no, I can do this standing up. Sit down. This building was known as the Del Pozo building, mainly by a sign reading Del Pozo on the tower. Is there any way that the Del Pozo name could be returned to the side of the building? We would then know it was the Del Pozo building, and it's sort of at least part of my memory that it has always been Del Pozo. Though I do remember the gas station signs that were rather garish. And And I want to point out a number of buildings in the EPV retain the names of the original owners. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. DeForest. I'll close public comment and go on back to comments from the commission. We had one from Commissioner Jury, a couple from Commissioner Jury. Commissioner Boucher, any comments?
Just that I do like this building. And I'm
Microphone.
I'm pleased to see what you're doing to keep it up. So thank you so much.
Commissioner Lavoie?
I think it's a great improvement.
Yes. Commissioner Murray?
Likewise, thank you very much for
thank
these
you.
wonderful buildings. And I also appreciate you going through all of the comments and really researching all the answers for us. I really, truly appreciate that.
Yeah, I was going to say you did a lot of legwork going back and forth between staff or between different staffs, transportation and Parks and Rec. So you must have been busy in the last 2 weeks. And I agree with all of the comments that have been made. I think you've done a wonderful job. I agree with the landscape plan. I think the simpler, the better. This is not a big, elaborate, and I'm glad you decided to change the color of the aluminum doors. I think that's going to go a really long way to make those recede. And I would think that this is ready for final approval, but I need somebody to make that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for final approval by Lavoie and a second by Boucher. Do you understand the motion?
Under discussion?
Yes, Mr. Drury.
Would the Dalpozo family be interested, if this is pursued into landmark status, would you be interested in memorializing the history of it in your family in a plaque?
Well, where would that be? On the building?
It could be on the building, it could be inside the office, in the front, under the tower. On the building outside. On the building outside.
No, we would have to make a historical, what would be involved in
Not
that?
necessarily.
Commissioner Lavoie?
Mr. Chair. I mean, often they are, and they are on landmarks, but there's nothing to prevent an owner of an historic building to memorializing the family involvement in history in a plaque, and since it's on an historic building, we should have some purview over reviewing what the text is to make sure it's accurate, and then, something small, something done in tile.
I don't know. I think
Or a bronze plate or something. Tile, yeah. But
The only comment further is that
This is part of Santa Barbara that disappears much too rapidly.
Right.
And it needs to be, people need to know the history of these, these industrial buildings.
I think it's a cogent comment, and I would like it to go into the motion, and I hope you do consider it sincerely and seriously, and and bring it.
Put it on the wall.
Come up with a design, and Mr. Twyble can help you with the design, and come up with a location for that, and come back to us, and we'll look at the text and tile. No. It was strongly suggested that the applicant or the owner pursue a plaque for this building, but it's not conditioned. You have a final approval with no comments other than that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Samples, can you think of any samples around town that maybe we could look at?
Any of the ones in El Paseo.
I was going to say El Paseo.
Smaller.
Even there's some in. There's some.
I'm trying to think of one. It seems like I've seen them, but I
There's
can't
one
remember where.
in the building where that funky little grocery store used to be. The Beavers building on
Santa Barbara Street?
Santa Barbara Street.
Okay.
Across from like the 805 Deli or that little Hayward's building.
Okay.
There might be one there.
There's a broker in there on the ground floor.
Oh, it used to be the sandwich on Olive Street?
No.
Santa
I know what
Barbara
you're talking about. No, this is on Santa Barbara Street.
Santa Barbara and Cabrillo.
Of the woman who had it, she was a marvelous woman, and we used to go in there all the time.
Yeah. Well, in any case, you can get with staff too. They might have some recommendations on locations, but you're good to go, and we appreciate your sensitivity to this building and nice application.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you.
You are all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.